Hey, welcome in. I'm Rita, and this is the story I'm telling myself. If you've ever felt like you're standing in your own way, you are not alone. Let's get into it. It is Wednesday this week, not Tuesday, but we are still here for the Story I'm Telling Myself podcast with our special guest, Dr. Fred Luskin. And I'm going to have him introduce himself in a moment. But before he does, if you are joining us live, we are so happy to have you with us on this Wednesday. Thank you for coming to the Story I'm Telling Myself podcast. Please jump in the comments, say hello, welcome Fred to the show, and introduce yourselves to one another because this show is for you. We want to hear your questions. We want to hear your comments. We are so happy to have you with us. And Dr. Luskin, I am so honored. All of my Wahasu friends are jealous that you are on my show, and I am honored to have you here. Thank you for joining us. Please introduce yourself to our listeners.
Well, hi, Rita. I'm Fred. Introduce myself. I'm a longtime Stanford University teacher who has focused on mindfulness and kind of help people be happier. And maybe the thing I'm most noted for is the Stanford Forgiveness Project. In terms of introducing myself, I started meditating and doing yoga in high school. I've been trying to practice those things for a very long time, and it's simple but not easy. You know, if there's one thing I've learned from all of this, these things are simple, but boy, are they not easy.
Well, and I think our listeners appreciate that. Here is Dr. Luskin's website, fredluskin.com. It's a great place for you to connect with him and learn more about him, fredluskin.com. But I think our listeners can resonate with that because our little reptilian brain wants to tell us everything in life should be easy. And if it's not easy, it questions whether or not we should be putting effort behind it. And knowing that there are things that are not easy, but they are worthy of that continued time and attention. It's important that we hear that sometimes from other people, because certainly in our own internal critic, that reptilian brain wants to lie to us and tell us to just give it up already.
You know, the inner critic is there, but there's also a tremendous need for us to grow and become better over our lifetime.
Oh, yes.
And so, yes, that inner critic can be very harsh and can destabilize us. And we also need reminders regularly that we can do better, that we can be kinder, and that other people exist in the world, not just us. So like everything else, it's finding a balance. It's not, inner critic bad, do what you want. It's like, how do we live this life skillfully so that maybe we can, I don't even know what the word is, be slightly better people when we're done than when we began?
Yes, well, and happier, because in that pursuit, I think there is that growth is
Yes.
part of what brings our happiness. It brings purpose to our lives. I want to say hello to Sharon. Glad to have you with us again from Vancouver, Canada. We also have Meryl with us. Great to have you back, Meryl. Glad that you are with us from New Jersey. And again, if you are joining us live, jump in the comments, ask your questions. We love to hear from you. This is a very special week because it is PODCASTHON 2026. And this is an organization that is committed to highlighting great nonprofits around the globe. So there's a full week where podcasts from around the globe are identifying and spotlighting a cause that is dear to their hearts. And Fred and I have chosen to spotlight the Forgiveness Project out of the UK. And I just want to tell you a few words about them before we get into Fred's story. The Forgiveness Project in the UK shares powerful, true stories. I'm sorry, I'm reading this, but I want to get it right. From people who've experienced deep hurt and chosen compassion over revenge. Isn't that powerful? compassion over revenge. Through events, trainings, and a wide range of resources, this nonprofit shows that forgiveness is a courageous personal choice, one that has the potential to transform lives and communities. You can visit them at theforgivenessproject.com to explore forgiveness and discover how the stories we tell today shape the world we live in tomorrow. And we will put that in the show notes if you are listening to this on your podcast channel. Theforgivenessproject.com will be linked in the show notes for you as well. And they do have wonderful resources. They've been delightful to work with in prepping for this episode. So we are very happy to be spotlighting them to you today. And I hope that you will visit them and consider giving some level of support. You know, it's in any organization, even small donations can really make a big difference when they're doing such powerful and important work. So, Fred, you founded the Stanford Forgiveness Project, and you're going to share a little bit of that story with us, because one of the things that is true to our human nature is that we tend to sit in our bitterness and anger, and we let it just mushroom and take over so much of our lives. And you had a moment where you came to recognize that about yourself, and it launched a whole new direction in your life. Walk us into that story and tell our listeners about that experience.
I mean, there's a couple of experiences that I've had where I've had to see how much I'm harming myself. The one that started the Forgiveness Project was a betrayal by a long-term friend. And it was so difficult for me to hold and so impossible for me to incorporate into how I saw my life. This was like, my closest friend in the world, and I had no skills for holding that what he did was so at variance with what I expected him to do. And making that accommodation from what I expected to what I actually got, boy, that took me a couple of years, and it was torturous inside of me. I was lucky enough to have a life partner who was strong enough and loving enough to tell me to get over myself, but in a kind-hearted way. She actually looked me in the eye one day and said, "Fred, I expected more from you. Like when we got married, like I thought I knew who I was signing up with. And this is not the person sitting in front of me. Like you allowed a very painful life event to derail you, and I believe you can do better." And
Wow.
yeah, I know, it's like, oi, like a knife to the heart. And that woke me up out of my self-indulgent stupor. And I moved ahead, and this little sign went off like, "Oh, well, you can forgive this person." And up until then, even though I was a therapist, like, forgiveness never entered my mind. It was, they're bad, I'm good, and that's just the way the world works out. But it jolted me, and part of what jolted me was, analogous to like 12-step programs, which is,
Mm.
wow, Fred, you are doing a really crappy job of living your life, and you're hurting people that care about you.
Now,
So,
do you think did you have to do some work to get to that revelation? Like how much time elapsed, and what was the process between when your partners Brene Brown says clear as kind. So clearly and kindly said to you, look, you are not being you, and that hurts me. For you to get to that place of
it
processing.
took a couple of years to get to that point. It did not take long from that point.
Okay.
And I can tell you because I had a moment of grace, actual grace, where after this experience, I found myself like still like arguing with life and her, and just like I walked around holding a little personal pity party for myself. And she told me I needed to go shopping for her to get something. And I argued with her. And then I went to this shopping center where she told me they'd have one particular item and they didn't have it.
Mm.
And so my inner nonsense of making everything about me and feeling sorry for myself at every conceivable drop of a hat, I just stopped dead because I'm in this store and they don't have what she wanted, but they have everything else. And my pity, like my self-indulgence went into overdrive, but it actually ran out of gas.
Oh, wow.
And like I'm sitting there with this habit of, well, your best friend lied to you and betrayed you and blah, blah, blah. And so I was able to defend all sorts of bad behavior on my part because of that. And all of a sudden I'm noticing that I'm in this abundance. Like I can buy anything I want. It's a beautiful day. That moment changed me because
And you
I
and you just ran out of gas. Like you really have no idea. Like, but suddenly the universe stepped in and with grace woke you up.
that's what it felt like. The universe stepped in with grace, and I never have been as able to go back to self pity from that moment of grace because I saw at that flash the relationship between gratitude and forgiveness.
Hmm.
That at some level, we're all choosing whether to say thank you or no thank you as our predominant choice. I saw how clearly I was saying no thank you. Like, it's not good enough. You gave me this, but not that. Life opened me this way, that way, but ultimately, it's not good enough. You know, I'm never going to be satisfied.
Wow, we
What
gotta pause. We gotta pause and let that sit with everybody a minute, Fred, because that is really powerful. And that is very human. I feel like that is very human. Like it is part of our human conditioning. And I want to welcome Lisa and Leanna to thank you for joining us and introducing yourselves in the comments. Glad you are here. But I feel like this is part of our human condition that we this feeling of self righteousness of this surety, our such strong protection of ego that we should get what we want at all times. That drive of our ego, and so this realization of where we put our attention is such a powerful self-examination we can all do.
I mean, it was deeper even than like, yes, it was where we put our attention, but it was how easy it is to find fault
Mm.
for me, and how quickly and like I almost felt like there was a moment where I recognized that that was almost my best quality, that I found fault more than I did anything else.
Oh, wow. Now that is a mirror moment right there.
Well, I mean, that's true for all of us, but I recognized it because what I was doing was so destructive to my well-being and my family, and and that I had a choice, but the choice was so small and moment to moment. It wasn't like, wow, big things like you have a loving partner, which did come later. It was right here in front of you. You're in a supermarket, and somebody put an apple in the supermarket for you to buy. So, what are you complaining about? And that is so, like, gets at the core of my own, I don't even know, greed, lack of appreciation, and just an unwillingness to live a happy life.
But if we have a little bit of grace for ourselves, I mean, the truth is that biologically we are pretty lazy and we form habits very easily. And you fell into a habit
Oh,
that just took over your life, right? And that's just part of humaning. But the cool thing is we can change, we can shift those habits. We don't have to allow them to control us. But like you said, it's where the connection to the 12-step process is, because the first thing is you have to recognize you have a problem.
yes, that's it. And that there's a necessity for making amends.
Oh,
That once you recognize that there's a problem, I didn't know anything about the 12 step programs then, but that there is this requirement that you clean up your mess. And that is now one of the major things that I teach around forgiveness, is that we have a lot of self forgiveness to do, which requires that we clean up our messes, that in the ways that we harm this world or other people, before we leave this planet, we need to recognize them. And then we need to, like, make it right wherever I can, like apologize, make an amend, and then let ourselves off the hook. Like, there is nothing that we need to hold bitterness towards ourselves once we have bought that we did it, and that we sincerely apologize, and that we do what we can to make it right, which includes working on ourselves so we don't do it again.
so I think it might be instructive or helpful for you to share one of the first steps, but I want to tell you that Ellen at Serrano, who is one of our Wahasu friends, is in the house with us from Fort Lauderdale. So glad to have you, Ellen, and Felipe. Nice to see you back again. So when you have this realization, how did you step into that amends? Can you remember anything about that particular journey, like where you started with that?
Well, besides the fact that it changed my life and started the Stanford Forgiveness Project, I'd say that's a little bit of paying it forward. But with my wife, I changed.
Mm.
I just changed. Like, it wasn't hard. It took intention and a certain grit to stick to it. But my heart opened. I mean, literally, my heart opened a little. And I saw the world a little differently. I saw abundance in supermarkets, and my house and friends, and I saw the unbelievable gift of someone who really tried to love me. And that it's so granular and simple and day to day, that but that willingness to do that makes any of us much more forgiving.
Well, and I think in the times that we are in the world right now, that ability to look around ourselves and see abundance when there's so much messaging of lack. And recognizing, like, Ari, that is a key takeaway for me from this conversation. Just making sure I'm checking in every day to notice the abundance around me, because most of us do live in abundance. That abundance may be in relationship energy. That abundance, it doesn't just have to be in materialism.
Well, I'm gonna also say that if your heart opens a little, you focus a little more on other people's lack than your own.
Mm.
The weakness and the smallness is in focusing on our lack. The grace is to focus on the world or other people's lack and try to help a little bit. Because the world is filled both with tremendous abundance and tremendous scarcity. And if you are like, I remember, and I've been teaching this stuff a long time. So decades ago, people would come into my classes at Stanford and, complain about their mother-in-law, their ex-partner, blah, 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 blah. And all these people had done bad things. So people don't make up how bad the world is. But they tell me about how, grandma lied or mom hit them, whatever it was. But then they would say something around, and poor me, like that was in my upbringing or that was in my relationship history. And it's not fair. And one of the ways that I would respond to that would say, well, yeah, okay, that makes sense. But how do you deal with the fact that you have food in your refrigerator and running water and, abundance and a job and transportation when close to 1 billion people go to bed hungry? Is that fair? And they'd look at me with annoyance, like, wait, you're taking away my pity party. And I've depended on this really deeply, because otherwise I'd have to be nice to the world, and I don't want to be nice to the world. And it's so easy to feel like things have been unfair, but the deeper reality is we all have suffered and all will suffer. And most of the people I interact with also have tremendous abundance that they take for granted. Like, you have food in your refrigerator and you can go to Safeway or, Albertsons anytime you want. So that idea that life treated you unfairly doesn't necessarily hold up.
Yes. Aruna, I see you. She said such a powerful message to hear tonight. And I agree. And people really are resonating with the make it right and let yourself off the hook. I just want to remind you, we are spotlighting in this special Podcastathon 2026, the Forgiveness Project out of the UK. If you're finding this episode compelling, you may be interested in the work of the Forgiveness Project, a nonprofit that shares powerful stories from people who have experienced harm, loss, and injustice, yet chosen compassion over revenge. Through events, trainings, and a rich collection of resources, which you can access, they create opportunities to build empathy and strengthen communities. Visit them at theforgivenessproject.com. We will link that in the show notes, theforgivenessproject.com, to explore their stories and learn more about forgiveness today. So, Fred, you founded the Forgiveness Project at Stanford. You've been teaching about forgiveness for a very long time, and one of the things that you were just noting that you recognize is that it is very easy for us to sit in our pity party, and many times we don't respond well when people call us out on our pity party, what else trips us up and fosters that bitterness, that anger, that feeling of being put upon, that causes us to create the need to recognize and bring forgiveness into our lives?
I mean, life does impose upon us, and it does frustrate us. And all the spiritual traditions of the world shout that that's so because we fantasize that our little self is the center of the universe, and life is reminding us daily that we're not.
Mm.
And so, as long as we're fighting City Hall, so to speak, and trying to say, this little Fred is so important, and everybody else is so trivial, we're going to suffer. And we're going to create waves and disturbances and all sorts of issues because we're not in alignment with reality. And so, one of the things that happens if you look at life, you see that everybody struggles with something. That, as the Buddhists say, old age, sickness, and death get us all. So that, even if you have somebody who somehow seems to have had it all, they're also going to lose it all.
Yeah, that's
And
true,
and
right?
they're going to lose everybody, and they're going to get old and decrepit, even if you were, like Michael Jordan got old, like it's so we misperceive life so deeply that sometimes we require something like forgiveness to say, yeah, it hurts, and yeah, that was wrong, and I'm not going to allow that to give me an excuse to just feel sorry for myself or just be bitter, because this is the way life is. It has beauty and it has ugliness, and I can hold on to that ugliness till I'm dead. But it's nobody else's fault if I make the choice to hold on to that ugliness. So over time, if we pay attention, we can learn.
Well, one of the things that struck me as you were just sharing that is that from a very young age, striving is reinforced in us as children. We strive for grades. We strive to be the captain of the basketball team, or, be the top player, to have first chair in the clarinet section of the band, whatever it might be. Like we have this positioning that is almost ingrained in our children of competing in the world and needing to strive, and striving and achieving is it gets enmeshed with acceptance
Well,
of
but then there's
self and of others.
two issues there. You can strive just for your ego's gratification, or you can strive for excellence, or you can strive to be of use to this world. Each of those different motivations carries different responses. So if you strive just for ego, then yes, your little sense of self is very vulnerable. But if you strive for excellence, or to do your best, or to learn, you're not so vulnerable. You're striving to become better at this life. And the other one, if you're striving to be of service, or you're striving to be of help, then that's a very different response. So striving itself is not a problem. But if you find that you're so vulnerable every time you're not successful, then you could examine your motives for why you are striving. And the other thing is, and I'm in my own little way, I deal with the question that you just posed on a not a regular basis, but a regular enough basis. I'm the mindfulness teacher for 3 Stanford sports teams. So this comes up all the time. I'm the mindfulness teacher for the Stanford women's basketball team, their women's gymnastics team. These young women are like the best in America. Okay. And I come in and remind them to stay present and not be so judgmental, either good or bad. Like, not go so yay me if I win, and not go so boo me if I lose, to pay more attention to your process and just like be grateful and happy that you're successful, and to be open so that you don't need that success so desperately, and just allow it. And so these people can be enormously successful, feel good about it, but not as crushed if they are not as successful. But I also have a young, I guess, stepchild, a younger stepchild, who deals with this in her athletic career. And we just went to New York and watched her perform. And in a race, she didn't do as well as she hoped. And I'm just proud of her. But she's like, ooh. And so we're all challenged to learn from our life experiences what makes us happy, what not doesn't make us happy. And in my little corner of the world, I do try to suggest to these athletes that they be grateful for their athletic ability and that they try to hone it as best they can and not be so stuck on winning and losing, because a lot of that is out of their control. But this is true for all of us.
Yes. Yes, it is. And it is reinforced. I mean, it's reinforced in business and all kinds of areas of our life. And I love that distinction that you made about focusing on ego, excellence, and the world, outside of yourself. And I think there is a real opportunity in that for us to when we want to sink into our pity party, or when our internal critic is jumping on the bandwagon and booing us loudly, to remember those things. Americo, thank you for joining us.
Rita, it took me a long time to recognize that forgiveness doesn't belong to me. It never belonged to me. I borrowed it for a little while, but there were years where I loved being introduced as this Stanford hotshot and got, interviewed all over the world and all this other stuff. And then after a while, it didn't make much difference if I also couldn't really like ride that understanding. Well, Fred, you want to do this to help, not just to get applause or not just to get your ego gratified, but be useful. And that changes a lot. I no longer cared so much whether the audience liked me, and no, it lowered all of the thermostat around what I was doing, but it didn't come. That didn't come easy. Had you interviewed me 5 years into this, I was way more yay Fred than I am now.
Well, I will tell you, as somebody who has had the pleasure to see you present 5 times on the Wahasu stages, That what I can tell you is that because you choose presence over performance, it is what makes you a fan favorite of my cohort group, for sure. And there's something to be said about that, about all of us are reconciling that. So we're talking about stories that we tell ourselves, and stories that trap us in our anger and our bitterness, our self-disappointment, our disappointment in others. What are some stories that people might choose to embrace that could help them shift that narrative and really begin to experience the power of forgiveness in their lives?
I there has not has to be there we're helped by making a very basic decision as to whether we're going to approve or not of ourselves. I believe that decision comes before the evidence. And one of the most famous, therapists of the 20th century, like Albert Ellis, talked pretty often about that. Like, you can't prove whether you're a good person or a bad person. There's no evidence. You can. So you're going to have to make some decision that you're good enough.
Make a decision that you're good enough. Wow, a lot of us.
Yeah, because that's all you can do. But you can also make a decision to get better. And that's within all of us. But one of the easiest things to notice when you notice you're good enough is to notice that so are other people. And so if you can pay a little more attention to again, this is an abundance question, but what you've been given rather than what you haven't, you start telling a very different story about your life. Very different story. So I can tell you, if you've seen me talk, you notice I have a bad hip and so I limp, and like it doesn't make much impact. But I remember when I started to recognize like how much kindness there was in the world, because how many people see me and give up their seats or hold elevators or do all sorts of remarkable positive things. And I taught myself to notice and thank every single one that comes my way. Because I don't want to miss, not because it's about me, I don't want to miss the world's goodness. Because that helps me see things clearly and changes my story dramatically.
What an easy takeaway, listeners. What if you just chose to give your attention every day to spotting goodness around you and acknowledging it, noticing it, saying something about it? I know that is a practice I have embraced, Fred, and it sets a mindset. It sets a tone in my life and my day when I just take a moment to do that.
Well, it also, this is what I realized in a way. The two of the things that I realized later in life after teaching forgiveness forever was one, that we're never really forgiving any one thing. Like, we may think we're forgiving mom, but that's not actually what we're forgiving. We're forgiving life. And we're always judging all of life. So if you had a crappy mom, but you were able to pay attention to all the goodness in your life, mom's okay. It's fine. I was given 100 units of kindness from this person, so mom's negative 100 got wiped out. So it's always a question of, did life give me enough for me to be gracious? Now, that's the question we always have. We may think it's about the individuals, and it is for a little bit, but then they get dispersed into our algorithm, and we're really saying, was life good enough for me to make peace with this? If not, I'll throw a hissy fit until I'm done. Now,
It's so
that's
sad that people leave the world still in that hissy fit, right? That they're still fighting and flailing against that, but it
yeah.
happens.
But that was a later in life thing, that you're actually forgiving the whole deal or not forgiving. The second is that very basic question of, like, what choice did I make? How much goodness was I willing to see and look for of other people's? That's also transformative. It is just transformative, and fully realizing that can be a life task.
Mm,
Like, it can take up 30 years.
yeah.
An example being, like any of us in committed relationships, long term partnerships, if you don't pay attention to the goodness your partner brings, you'll create a lot of fights because they're crazy and annoying. Always, everybody is. But if you don't balance that, then your perception and your story of the world is wrong. Like that was the deepest understanding it came to, that I was lying to myself. My story was simply false. That yes, this friend had betrayed me, and yes, I had a very difficult mother-in-law, and surrounding that was unbelievable abundance. It doesn't make what the bad things go away, or it doesn't minimize them, but it gives us a chance for a truthful story.
Oh, I love that. I love that because I love that. It's not about telling ourselves that they don't matter or that we're removing them in any way. It is just choosing to reset our focus and allow the abundance to fill the frame instead of the scarcity.
Well, both. You want to
Yeah.
actually fill the frame. And people with long term grievances, they don't fill the frame, they just have their grievances. So that's what I realized, that
Wow.
we were, most of us tell ridiculous bullshit stories on the simplest level. You ask somebody how they're doing, and they tell you, I got so much stress, I got so much to do. They give you this litany of all the stuff they have to do, and they make believe they have this tough life. But they don't tell you again that they woke up in a house with heat and running water and somebody who cared for them. If they told you that too, then you could trust their story. But when they don't tell you that, their story is just bullshit. Maybe not bullshit, but so incomplete as to function as bullshit.
Well, it is certainly feeding. Our brains are their own little microprocessors, and it's garbage in, garbage out. You're feeding garbage stories in. Of course,
Exactly.
you're going to get garbage results on the other end, for certain. Well, Fred, I wish we could continue on. We are at our time for today. There's every time I hear you speak, I take so much good stuff away. And I know I'm going to listen to this particular episode 2 or 3
Thank
times to
you.
keep taking things in from you. You are incredibly generous in sharing your lived experiences with much vulnerability and the insights that those brought. Thank you so much for coming to the story I'm telling myself and sharing that.
So I'm an old hippie, and Wavy Gravy, the MC at Woodstock, was said his basic learning in life is we're all bozos on the bus. And that is so true. We're so much more alike than different.
And remember that, friends, carry that with you. This is an episode you've got to share with others. Make sure that you hit that share button and you pass this on to a few other people. For all my friends in the comments today, thank you for joining us. Thank you for all your comments. I'll be responding to you over in LinkedIn. And if Dr. Luskin has time, he might join me to do that. And FredLuskin.com if you want to learn more about Fred and you want to connect with him. That's a great place for you to connect in. And the forgivenessproject.com, that is who we are featuring. We're spotlighting in today's episode. Make sure that you visit them and take advantage of all of their resources. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I will see you back next Tuesday with Donna Cravata, and that's going to be a fun episode as well. Thank you for joining us today. Have a lovely day, Fred. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rita. All the best.
Thanks for joining us. If you love this episode, leave us those 5 stars and be sure to share this with a friend. And if you didn't, don't worry about it. See you back here next week.